Hebrew had been taught in Cambridge since the 16th century, right? Cambridge has had a professor of Hebrew since the 16th century. Why do we have a professor of Hebrew? Because Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife.
Okay.
Right?
So he's like, we better get back to the source so I can find a reason for divorce.
And he ran out of reasons in the New Testament, so he started looking for the Old Testament and the Talmuds, right? So the Hebrew Bible and the Talmuds. And for that, he needed specialists.
Okay, I didn't know that. So
Henry VIII owned a whole copy of the Talmud because, really?
Has that survived?
Yeah. It was bought by, I think it was collected by, was it collected by the Valmadonna guy? Can't remember. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so Henry VIII created Regius Professor of Hebrew here in the 16th century to interpret the Old Testament,
Okay.
And the idea was really to interpret it in his favour,
you know the story of the Bologna Scroll. So there was this meeting in 1530 between the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope, and one of the things they discussed was King Henry's great problem, which was he wants a divorce. And the Holy Roman Emperor says, well, here in Bologna, we have the original Pentateuch written by Ezra, which is what they believed, is what they would tell visitors to this church in Bologna. This isn't just a Torah scroll; it's the original one written by Ezra. So they open it up to see, does it have the verse that Henry is citing as his justification for the divorce? And today we have that scroll, and that verse has been erased. Which is really strange because we have an account from 1531 which says they found the verse and decided we don't care what the verse says, we do what the Pope says.
Wow.
So
okay, that's interesting.
So that's interesting that ties into Cambridge, and wow, it's everything ties together.
It's also, I just point out, that's not the original scroll written by Ezra.
No, of course not.
Because that's in the Ben Ezra synagogue.
Oh.
Because that is so that until today, I think tourists are told that scroll is in the synagogue.
Really?
It was looked at by Adler. When Adler, he wrote his book. He travelled around Jewish communities of the Middle East, and he wrote his book about Jews of many lands. And he went to the synagogue and he looked at the scroll, and he said it's like a 16th, 17th century one.
Oh wow!
So we had a teacher of Hebrew here, so rabbinics.
What does that mean, rabbinics, for the audience who may not know?
Well, this means teaching everything, after the Hebrew Bible, really. Okay. The idea being that, so the Mishnah and so on, they are important for understanding the context in which Jesus, Jesus arose. That's it. So it's the Second Temple period, that kind of thing.
So they had that concept even back then, because I'll often hear that this is something that was kind of revolutionized by David Flusser, that up until then, Christians didn't really look to the Mishnah and the Talmud to understand the life of Jesus.
Well,
but it sounds like they had some notion of this even back then.
Well, I think this possibly what you really do see. So these were lone Jewish scholars in a Christian university, right? Solomon Shilazanesi, in those days. So his salary, I think, was paid by the Montefiore family, not by the university, but he taught here. And when Shilazanesi died in, I think, 1890, Schechter took over, I think, in 1890. I think his salary was also still mostly paid by the Montefiore family, right? So they were kind of like, they did important work, but you get the feeling they weren't exactly welcoming Cambridge, right? They wasn't like, they weren't rolling out the red carpet for Jews in the University of Cambridge, which, was still, it's a conservative organisation even today, but in those days, they'd only just relatively recently allowed fellows, teachers in the university to marry. Because until that point, they had to be bachelors. Like the old monastic principles there. Okay. And that had changed in the 19th century.
So Henry can get a divorce, but the professors at Cambridge can't get married.
No, at all. Anyway, so Solomon Shilazanesi, when he got the job here, originally, Cambridge is sort of a democracy in that everyone has a vote in the Senate.
Really?
All the permanent staff have a vote in the Senate. And the account of the vote for Shilazanesi is that he was much opposed because he was a Jew.
Wow.
So he
openly they didn't have a problem saying that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, and I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but there's a story about Benjamin Disraeli, who later became the prime minister, I think the first and only Jewish prime minister of the United Kingdom. I was going to say England, but I'm not sure that's accurate. And so there was a debate in one of the House of Lords or whatever it was, and sorry for I'm American, I don't know, one of the houses of your parliament, and they called him a barbaric Jew or something to that effect, and he responded famously, perhaps apocryphally, when my ancestors ruled the world, your ancestors were running around painted blue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's true.
And Disraeli was actually a Christian. He was a very devout evangelical Christian. He had converted. But still, he was a barbaric Jew to his opponents.
Yeah, yeah. He was also a great novelist. So the idea of him being a barbarian. Yeah, it's one of
I didn't know that.
I don't know, possibly the only No. There's not been other prime ministers who've written... Oh, Boris Johnson. He wrote a novel.
Did he?
All right,
okay.
Sorry. No, anyway, let's move on from that.
All right.
So when Schiller and Hesse started teaching here, he definitely brought a different side to the study of Hebrew. So he exposed scholars who previously had studied Hebrew, essentially, studying the Hebrew Bible, to the range of Jewish commentators on the Bible. And you can see this by the time that Schechter is here. One of Schechter's friends is Charles Taylor, who becomes the master of St. John's College. Yeah, so Cambridge is a collegiate university. Lots of these old sort of, again, kind of almost monastic houses. Colleges.
So unlike in the United States, here you have a university and there's a bunch of colleges that make up the university. And each one of those is pretty much independent or autonomous, or how does?
Yeah, they're all independent financial institutions. They're all charities.
Okay.
They all got their different customs. They've all got different ages. The oldest is Peterhouse, which dates back to 1284 or something like that. I don't know. But a lot of the oldest colleges have been lost and amalgamated into new ones because they were. The sort of religious orders have now disappeared and things.
And something that really surprised me is. Like you could be on staff here at the university, but you don't have privileges at one of the particular colleges because you're not a fellow of that college, right? Meaning, like I encountered that with one of the people who works with you, that we tried to go to this particular library, and they said, "Oh well, I mean, you know, who are you? You're not a fellow here at this."
Yeah, so Cambridge colleges are.
I'm like, what?
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, I understand that for me. And it was actually easier for me to get in than it was for her.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Cambridge colleges are they're very old-fashioned. Not as bad as Oxford, but but they're very old-fashioned. I mean, you've seen the college porters, so the guys who control the access to and from, often wear bowler hats.
Yeah, and they're not actually porters. They don't carry your bags for you.
No, God, no.
So what does porter mean by that? Is that what it originally meant?
Yeah, porter. I don't know. Porter. No, porter is something to do with. Isn't it to do with doors? Isn't it like guarding the door?
From the port.
Yeah,
that makes
I think so.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm
right. So when you go to any, whenever I'm here, I stay at usually one of the what we call dormitories. What do you call it? Accommodations or something, or like where the students sleep.
Yeah, college accommodation, college rooms.
Okay, I call them dormitories in America. And then you check in with the porter's lodge.
Yes.
So, and you're always constantly dealing with the porter's lodge. Yeah, it's very old. And they do wear the bowler hats. They do.
And some of them are rude because that is the history of their position in that college. So Trinity porters are famously very rude because they have always been rude. And so every new Trinity porter who starts work there knows that he has to be rude.
So I can say from my experience, I've never had a negative experience with them. They've always been very polite to me. But I never stayed at Trinity College, so I don't know.
Yeah. And maybe it's changing, but that used to be the Cambridge thing.
And maybe it's the renting up. So what I do usually is I'll go between terms when the students aren't there, and so I can sleep in one of the dorms. They basically like a hotel, but it's like 4 minutes from this library. So it's amazing.
Fantastic.
But no, they've always been really polite to me, really nice to me. It's kind of it is kind of strange. I'm a grown man sleeping in a dorm room, but it's better than staying somewhere that's 30 minutes away. So I appreciate it. So
well, my understanding is that the scholar of rabbinic texts, Jacob Neusner, famously productive scholar, that he once came to give a lecture and he stayed in a college room. And I think I got this story from my predecessor, Stefan Reif, which means it must be true. Is that Neusner arrived and the porter was rude to him. So he picked up his suitcase and left without ever giving the lecture.
Wow.
So that sounds like a true Cambridge story to me.
Okay. All right, but I'm sure that was quite a few decades ago.
That was some time ago.
And now you can do a bad review on universityrooms.com if they do that. So maybe they're more careful.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, no, TripAdvisor has probably changed everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, so one of Schechter's friends and kind of he mentored in Jewish texts, following in the footsteps of Schiller and Hesse had studied, was Charles Taylor, who was master of St. John's College, became master of St. John's College. He was a mathematician. He wrote about maths, with cones or something he did, I don't know. Anyway, but he was far more interested in God because, he was a devout Christian, like many of them in the university in those days. And he had taken instruction from Schiller's and Essay and from Schechter, and he wrote a commentary on Pirkei Avot. So on a tractate in the Mishnah.
Yeah, Ethics of Our Fathers, it's usually called in at least American English.
And he wrote that commentary is surprising for the number of Jewish sources which it uses.
Okay.
Right? Which would be unheard of for a Christian scholar to do that. But the fact is, he had been exposed by Schiller and Essay and Schechter to all the Jewish sources, and that commentary I think is still regarded today as the best commentary on Pirkei Avot written by a Christian mathematician.
So that's really interesting. Well, how many have been written by Christian mathematicians, to be fair? But so it's really interesting. So you do have this phenomenon that some of these Christian Hebrewists, they would open up some Jewish text, and it'd be like they were discovering it for the first time, like no one had ever read it or commented on it. And here you're saying he's within this whole internal Jewish dialogue of, what does this passage mean and how do we understand it? What are the parallels? And he's drawing on all that. That's really interesting.
And if you look at the college libraries, so we're in the university library, which is the main library of the university and has an official role in guarding the intellectual knowledge of the nation as well, because we're a copyright library. We get a copy of every book published in the UK.
So you have some incredible treasures in this library, and we're going to get to the most important treasure of all, which is the maybe it's not the most important treasure, but it's the treasure that you're focused on, which is the Cairo Geniza collection. Arguably, it is the most important. I guess it depends what your perspective is. Like some people might say Codex Bezae or Bezae, which is also here. Yeah. That's one of the key manuscripts of the New Testament is here in the library.
Yeah, one of the outliers because it represents a slightly, considerable differences from the kind of received text.
But it's one of the 5 great unseals.
And it was deliberately, it was Geniza'd in Cambridge. No, it's absolutely true. So Theodore Beza, who gave it to the university. I think we still have do we still have the letter that he sent with it? I think we do. He sent it to Cambridge, one, to sort of preserve it, but also two, to sort of keep it out of the way so that people, because it was sufficiently divergent from the standard text of the New Testament that it's better if we, people don't look at it that much.
Wow.
And so
that's interesting. So I wonder to what extent that's still the case, meaning the text of the New Testament in the Greek has now, we have sort of a critical edition with Nestle Aland. I think we're at 28. So I wonder how different it is today.
I think it's less different today, and we can see where it fits into the different, like the Alexandrian stream and all that. We can see where it fits within those streams.
Okay.
It's still a very precious manuscript, and it's one that, again, we don't show very often because it's a beautiful manuscript with parchment so thin that it's sort of translucent, but it's very fragile. So, like the Nash Papyrus, we tend not to show that, although it's among our greatest treasures. So, yes, Cambridge has a pretty good record of kind of biblical treasures, and also we've got so in Jewish treasures. I mean, we've got 1,000 Hebrew manuscripts of various kinds, like codices, books.
Yeah, like one that is often overlooked is at 1753. ADD 1753. Is one of the manuscripts that these great scholars of Masoretic studies, like Yevin and Dotan, they embroider. One? It's a Yemenite one from the 16th century, but the claim is that it was copied either directly or maybe several generations removed from the Aleppo Codex, and it includes parts of the Aleppo Codex that are now missing.
Yes.
So it's one of the key manuscripts that when Breuer was comparing all the different manuscripts of the Tanakh, he considered this one of the key witnesses. So
think about it. We should really digitize that manuscript. I don't know why.
I photographed the whole thing, so I'm happy to share the images. But you can photograph it much better than I can with your sophisticated. Really, it's about the lighting, right? And you have to spend quite a bit of time to kind of position it. But that absolutely needs to be digitized. It's really an important manuscript.
Yes, that's true. And and it's a good example of how medieval manuscripts are important. It's not just all about the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls will tell you a story about the Bible, but it's a different story. They're not, it's not the Ur text. You're not searching for the best best edition of the final text from the Dead Sea Scrolls, because the Dead Sea Scrolls represent a text still in flux.
Well, in this case, it's a really late manuscript, but may represent a textual tradition 700 years earlier. At least that's like what Breuer's claim was, right? So a lot of times we'll say, oh, that's a late manuscript. We can ignore that. It's not important. But sometimes the later texts preserve an earlier version of the text.
Yeah, and if we've decided the Aleppo Codex is the text that we want, then any witnesses to it are important because of the great loss that happened.
Now he was focusing on things like Gaiot and the kind of obscure linguistic features. And the problem with that is there was this claim by almost everybody who wrote a manuscript in Yemen that it was based on the Aleppo Codex, right? It's kind of a formula that you spit out because Maimonides gave a stamp to the Aleppo Codex.
That's right, and they worship Maimonides.
And whatever Maimonides, he basically, as they saw it, at least saved Yemenite Jewry.